Tell him, McCluskey. Tell him what time it is.
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
All you people are so scared of me.
Come quietly or there will be trouble.
Man, that's just me.
I'm Batman.
This is Sparta!
There is a tiger in the bathroom!
I'm an excellent driver.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Pop quiz, hotshot.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Do you know the Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man.
Yes, I know the Muffin Man. Who lives on Drury Lane?
Well, she's married to the Muffin Man.
The Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man!
Hello and welcome back to this week's Monday Movie Show, to our DVD and Blu-Ray section. Coming up in this half of the show, we'll have reviews of
Flowers of War, The Tunnel, I Melt With You, Assault, Return, and the DVD alternative is The Rock.
Yep. Before that, though, we shall be going through the DVD and Blu-ray combined top 10 for the UK. Okay. So, starting at number 10 this week with Despicable Me.
Yeah, like we said in the cinema part of the show, the best thing about the Lorax is the small little critters and creatures, and we referred to Despicable Me, and it's just ironic that Despicable Me's in the top 10. I think it's probably down to the news, the fact that the Minions are getting their own film, and Despicable Me is quite funny because of the Minions. The movie itself is distinctly average, and it's another one of those things that if it didn't have the small Minion characters, the movie itself just wouldn't be as good.
Number 9 is Steven Spielberg's Warhorse.
Yeah, the only reason why we're seeing re-entries of films that have dropped out the top 10 is because the fact that there's nothing getting released on DVD of any kind of note whatsoever. Warhorse is a really good film. It's a really long film. It's on for nearly 2.5 hours. And it's sort of like... It's like 5-6 different stories sandwiched into one, but with the theme of the horse running through each one of the stories. But it's still a really good film.
And everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
And number 8 is The Raven.
The Raven, John Cusack plays Edgar Allan Poe. It centres around the last few days of Poe's life. The problem with the film is it feels a bit disjointed because it takes a lot of Poe's previous works and tries to make a film out of different Poe's stories, and that doesn't work for most of it. There's also the problem with the fact that there's too much fog in the film. It's more like a Michael Jackson video than a movie itself. But there are elements of the film that work really well, and I think John Cusack looked a little bit like Edgar Allan Poe, but too much like Derren Brown in my eyes.
Okay. Moving on to number 7, Contraband.
Yeah, Contraband is a distinctly... Well, I'm going to give it a little bit of a notch up. It's not distinctly average. It's slightly above distinctly average. It's just... There's nothing special that happens in the film itself. It's got Mark Wahlberg in it, who's a really good actor. I think he's miles better in Ted than he is in Contraband. It just follows the story where he's got to go and obviously bring some $15 million worth of fake currency back into the country for Giovanni Ribisi's character, who's supposed to be this high and mighty drug lord who gets beaten up like 3 times in the film. It's just a slightly above average action film.
Number 6, 21 Jump Street.
Yeah, this was my funniest film of the year, but now it's been usurped by Ted. 21 Jump Street, Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum's surprising, got some really good comic timing in it. Jonah Hill, I think, helps him in this film along with that comic timing. It's surprising that Jonah Hill is quite funny in it as well, considering that I find him really annoying, and he's in a film this year which I deem to be in my top 10 worst films, called The Sitter. So it's a really funny film, and I liked it.
And number 5, We Bought a Zoo.
Yeah, slightly too long by about a good 20 minutes. It's a very, very, very safe film. It doesn't try to do anything out of the box. It's got Matt Damon in it and Scarlett Johansson. It's kids' film that you would normally expect it to be shown on a Sunday afternoon. Like when ITV used to show these matinee movies. It's that kind of film.
Street Dance 2 is at number 4.
Which is an absolute pile of steaming turd. It's just, the acting is horrible. The dancing is pretty decent, apart from the crew who supposedly call themselves invincible. Honestly, they are not invincible. They are really bad at dancing. It's just cheesy. It's cheese fest from start to finish.
Number 3 is the exotic. Sorry, oh god, I screwed that up. The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, which is a perfectly fine drama. It's done really well because it has got this this thing. It's a kind of film that you could watch with your parents or with your grandparents even. It's about a group of old age pensioners who are wooed into going over to India to this hotel, and they find out there some sort of it's kind of like a journey of self-discovery for them because they're in a land that they don't know. There's great performances in it from Judi Dench. You've got Maggie Smith. You've got a great film in here. It's a little bit long because it does run over the 2-hour mark, I remember, but it is a really enjoyable, and I'm still surprised how well it's doing. It's gone back up in the chart this week. And number 2 is The Dark Knight and Batman Begins.
I don't think we actually need to say very much about The Dark Knight and Batman Begins. It's only there because of the fact that The Dark Knight Rises, and people who haven't got them have just bought them. And no, I still not bought Batman Begins.
And the top new entry this week at number 1, Mirror Mirror.
Now, Andy was a bit more forgiving with Mirror Mirror than I was, because I just thought this was awful. It honestly, nothing about this film is redeemable. Julia Roberts is on uber cheese form, and she really grated on me. The best thing about the film is the Seven Dwarves. The look of the film's just terrible. Tarsem Singh is just a horrible director, and he should just stop doing films.
You haven't used your word of the week yet.
I'm not going to use that word.
I thought you would on that film.
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to move on to a first of our DVD reviews, which is The Flowers of War. Or the original title, which I'm going to mispronounce, Jin Ling Shishan Chiai.
That sounds like something you order in a Chinese restaurant with some fried rice.
Well, it is a Chinese-made film. It's actually from the Chinese box office that it was made, and it was released there. It did astoundingly well and is now the most successful Chinese film in the Chinese box office. I'm not sure if it got released here in the cinema, but it's coming out.
It was released in the cinema on Friday. It was,
yeah. So it got a small release. But it's released on DVD today and Blu-ray today. It stars Christian Bale in the movie as John Miller, who is a man who now it's set in 1937 Nanking in China, and during the time when Japan was actually attacking and invaded Nanking and took over that part of the country. The whole thing is set around this character of John Miller, who is a mortician who's on his way to a church to actually bury the priest of the church who has died in circumstances before we don't know exactly what happened. But when he gets there, he finds that the church is become a sort of a haven for the students that are there, as well as a group of prostitutes who have arrived from one of the neighbouring villages. And he finds himself in a position where he's asked to pretend to be the priest to protect the students and these women. Here's the clip.
Why not answer so?
She called me Father John.
We all need you.
I'm a mortician.
You are a priest.
No.
If we have a priest, maybe Japanese not there. You are a priest.
George, I'm not a priest. I'm not. I stayed here because I was looking for your cash. And because that's the nicest bed that I've slept in years. I didn't get there, but is that like a priest? I'm not a priest. I'm not. I took catechism lessons as a kid. Sometimes I remember that when I'm drunk, which I am as often as I can be.
You'll not be priest. Tell girls yourself.
So the film is really centered around the performance of Christian Bale in it, it's kind of a weird thing because if you know Christian Bale from his films, you'll know that one of his first films and the major one he was in was Empire of the Sun, which is of a similar kind of story and the sort of to do with the East and sort of the armies invading and such. And the thing is, in here, he gives a really good central performance as this character who finds himself in this situation that he doesn't want to be involved in, but then finds that he's the only person who can do anything there to help. There's great performances from him and also all of the Chinese actors that are playing you have both the mixture of the students who are at the school, who are at the church, and they're all women except for the one boy you heard in that scene there, George, who's with him. And then all of the prostitutes that have turned up and are then hiding in the cellar as well because the Japanese army have invaded, they've surrounded the church and they're keeping them prisoner inside there with sort of a threat of what may come later. The whole thing is a really well directed piece of work. It's directed by, now again I'm going to struggle with this, Yimou Zhang, I think is the name. Sorry if I'm not getting that right, but I'm not sure if that is not. It is extremely well directed by Zhang. It's great performances in the film. The only thing I would say is that it is a little bit on the long side. It could have done with some stripping of some time because it runs for 2 hours and 26 minutes. Had it been that sort of 20 minutes shorter, it would have been for a more effective film. There are scenes in the film which are quite strong and graphic because of the fact that it's soldiers, including things like rape and killing of people. There is a mix as well. There's some action sequences in it to do with some of the last soldiers that are actually fighting off the Japanese invading soldiers. So you have a mix of everything in there, and it is a very emotionally powerful film. But it's not for everyone. There's also the fact that majority of the film is spoken in Chinese with subtitles. So for people who don't like subtitles, although I don't care for you then, you won't enjoy it. But if you have taste and you can stand a film with subtitles, check this out because it's a great performance and a great piece of film.
Yeah, right. Onto The Tunnel, which is a really small Australian. Well, it's not a horror film. It's another one of those. It's not even a found footage film because it's done like a mockumentary. It's a mock documentary about news journalists who, in Australia, below the subway systems or beside the subway systems, there are these miles and miles and miles of abandoned tunnels, and the Australian government, their plan was to use these tunnels to hold millions of gallons of water because they were having water shortages, and the best way they thought would be to use these tunnels for that purpose. However, this journalist is trying to dig into why the Australian government is doing that, because it's going to leave a lot of homeless people having nowhere else to sleep because they use these tunnels for that. So she decides to dig into why the Australian government is doing that and explore these tunnels, but she doesn't have permission because the government will not give her permission. They don't want her to find out exactly what is going on in these tunnels. So her and her film crew decide to go down into these tunnels to explore what's going on. They discover that these tunnels used to be places where people used to house up during the war. And so they discover toilets, they discover bedrooms and stuff like that. However, there is something else down inside these tunnel areas that seems to be not only killing the homeless people, but stopping any work getting done on these tunnels. And it's just a film that follows them in a mockumentary style, cutting between them in the tunnels and them explaining what's gone on. All the way through the film. The strange thing about this movie is that it was released under a project called the 135K Project. Now, what this project does is they fund films on a really small budget, like this film was made for $135,000, so people can see the movie for free. Now, you can watch this film in its entirety for free on YouTube. It's available on YouTube, which is a very strange reason why it's getting a proper official release. Yeah, you can be nice and go out and buy a copy of it, but if you know that there's a free copy of it on YouTube, legally, 100% legally, then obviously people are going to go over there, watch it, and unless you really like the film, you're not going to go out and buy it on Blu-ray and DVD. So it's an interesting way to do this film. It came out in Australia in 2010, so it's been 2 years since, for it to come over here. Now, it just plays it like you would expect these kind of movies. It's just a very simple, basic premise of a film. There are a few creepy moments in it because there is a lot of darkness, and the use of darkness in sound in horror films works much better than gore and just throwing lots of blood and people getting ripped apart, because you feel more tense when it's dark and there's only like little trickles of sound. The thing that's also that's in these tunnels, you get brief glimpses of it every now and again, and it is really scary when that thing crops up. And the last 20 minutes of the film works especially really well. It's just it falters a lot with the fact that it takes so long to get down into the tunnels. The movie itself is on for an hour and a half, and a good 45-50 minutes of the movie is explaining what the Australian government is doing and why they want to go down into the tunnels rather than actually exploring the tunnels themselves. So if you can stick by the first 50 minutes, the payoff at the end does help the movie a little bit, but it's just it pulls it down in the first 50 minutes, and it makes it just a very average film rather than a scary sort of like mockumentary that it should have been.
Okay, I'm going to go on to I Melt With You, which is directed by Mark Pellington, who directed one of my favourite films, which is Arlington Road. It's a small film that people may have heard of. It stars Thomas Jane as Richard, who's the sort of the first of four friends, played by, you've got Jeremy Piven, Rob Lowe, and Christian McKay. They're all friends in their 40s who are once a year meet up, and this year they all are meeting up for Tim, played by Christian McKay's 44th birthday. The group of them meeting up in this house that they have. They're all successful. They're all kind of doing well financially and such. So they're all meeting up there where they have a sort of a bender, essentially, with alcohol, booze, drugs, you name it, they have it. And things are all sort of coming to a head when eventually things come up about their past, whether or not they're entirely happy with their lives and such, and all relates to a pact that they made when they were kids. Now, the whole thing about this film is that it is quite a sort of a headache of a film when you're watching it. Not accidentally. It seems to me this was actually the intent, because of the fact that it's to do with the characters, and they're all sort of having this point of reaching midlife and deciding, am I happy? Am I liking my life? Do I like where I am with myself and such? And this whole problems of them, while they're discussing this and having these issues cropping up while they are high as a kite. Now, the whole thing of it is that it gets a bit messy in the last half of the film without going into detail. Things get out of hand, the story starts to fall apart a bit, but the thing that does keep it interesting to watch, and it runs for 2 hours and 10 minutes, so it's not a short film, but the thing that is really central to it is the performance of these four actors, and the three of them in particular. You've got Thomas Jane, Jeremy Piven, and Rob Lowe, who give really great performances. Thomas Jane is severely messed up in this film, and it's a great performance from him, great performance from Rob Lowe. The two of them in particular, in some of the scenes when they're some scenes when they're sort of high and all, and they're discussing things and they're crazy and everything, and then later on when they're on the downsides and things are just sort of them quietly sitting there hungover with heads that are about to explode but still talking about things, and it's not quite working for them. The problem is, as I say, the film's running time, 2 hours and 10 minutes for this is way too long. It could have done easily been half an hour shorter. It would have been a better film. You've also got in there Carla Gugino, who pops up towards the end of the film as a woman who's in the area where they're staying in this house. She's not got a lot to do. She should have a lot more in the film. She's a bit wasted in it. But the style of it and the way it's done and the soundtrack of the film, it really is a really sort of tour de force on your head for when you're watching it. It's a very strong film. It is rated an 18 because of the drug use, which is quite graphic, and it's quite strong throughout the film. It's quite a hard film, and it's quite depressing as well. But it's a good drama, and the main thing about it is this performance of these four actors, which makes it really, really great performance. But be warned, it is dark. It probably, at the end of it, you'll walk out of it maybe thinking, oh, I don't know, what am I going to do now? Slash my wrists.
Charming. Right, on the French film Assault, or Les Assault, would have been a French film. It's directed by Julien Leclerc. Horrible name. It's a very simple story. It's based on a true story. It's set in 1994, round about Christmas Eve. It's about a group of 4 Islamic terrorists who take over this flight in Algiers in Spain. They want to fly this plane from Algiers to France. You find out during the movie why they want to do that. I'm not going to give it away. They've taken everybody on the plane hostage, around about 200 passengers. During the film, they demand that they want to get to France because they want 2 of their Islamic fundamentalist people to be released by the French government. And so they'll take all these hostages. If they don't receive what they need or what they want, they're obviously going to execute. They're going to blow up the plane itself and going to cause something else really big in the film. That's about it. That's it for the storyline. There isn't anything else I could tell you which would probably make the storyline any clearer, because it's just a really simple film. The French SAS are actually sent in to try and get the terrorists, and it's very predictable. Now, the problem with the film is it suffers the same kind of problem that The Tunnel suffered from. It's on for 90 minutes, and for the first good 70 minutes of the film, it's more like a training exercise for these SAS people. There is even scenes where they're training on a fake plane while this terrorist threat is going on, while these terrorists have got these people on the plane. They show you a bit where the SAS are training on a plane to try and get the terrorists, and I'm just thinking that's a waste of film that they should not have included in that. The dialogue is awful. It is really, really bad. The conversations between them is terrible. The Islamic terrorists, all they shout all the time is praise Allah. Every single time when they're shooting their gun, they're just shouting praise Allah. Or there is just really weird conversations between characters in the film. It's just the script. It feels like it's been written by a 5-year-old. Like the 5-year-old's learning his ABCs and he thinks he can piece together a perfect script, and that's what it feels like. The last 15 minutes of the film is pretty decent, but it's just a pointless movie. There isn't anything in this film which makes you think, oh, this is frightening, this is on the edge kind of thriller that you would expect this kind of movie to be, considering that it was based on a true story. It's a pointless film. It's not worth watching at all.
Okay, I'm just going to go straight into Return, which is the final new release this week. It's a movie starring Linda Cardellini, who people may recognise her from ER, the TV series, who plays a soldier who's returning back from being deployed abroad to the States, to her family, to her husband, played by Michael Shannon, and her 2 children. Things are not quite as she expects, they're not quite as she remembers. The relationship between the 2 of them isn't entirely working anymore, possibly due to the fact that he may be having an affair with someone. The whole thing is written and directed by Liza Johnson, and it's the thing is with it that it's focusing on the disillusionment of coming back from the war to everyday life, and things don't quite feel right. Which comes through fairly well, but then the movie just essentially dwells on that for the whole of its 90-odd minutes running time. It's 97 minutes running time. It's far too long that it focuses on all that. There are moments in it where you're sitting there waiting for something to happen, and it's just someone sitting in a chair looking at something. And it really needed to be stripped down. There needs to be more added to it. It's not really got much of a narrative to it. The whole thing of the problems that she's having with her family and whether or not they stay together or not is going to be it could have been played out a lot more. It could have been done a lot more interestingly, instead of this, unfortunately, which it borders on being comatose. It's it's a nice performance from Cara Delevingne. She gives a decent performance in it, but the whole thing of the story being stretched out for that 90 odd minutes just doesn't work. It could have easily been fit all that's in there to half that time, and you still need more to add it to it. So it's not worth checking out as far as I'm concerned. Eventually, when it does get shown on television, if you're interested in it, see it, but you'll probably find that you fall asleep halfway through it. Okay, our DVD alternate for this week is The Rock, which is from back in 1996. I'm going to get hell for this, but I'm recommending a Michael Bay movie.
You're not going to get hell from me because I do actually like The Rock.
It's amongst one of his best films that I think he's made. It's a brilliantly directed action film. It is pure Michael Bay action, but it's got a decent base of a story to it, and you've got great performances in it from Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage playing a sort of desk officer who's a chemist, who then ends up being teamed up with an ex-SAS prisoner who used to be in The Rock Alcatraz and now has to break in with him to try and stop a madman played by Ed Harris from launching chemical rockets on the city of San Francisco. It is just full out action. It's amazing that it doesn't get boring for a film that's over 2 hours in length. It's one of my favourite action films, if not possibly my favourite action film ever, because it's just so well put together, so much fun, and at points even Nicolas Cage can be funny in this.
Sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, then check it out. It's probably bound to be on television at some point, or go and rent it, or see if you can get hold of it. It's a great action film. One of Michael Bay's best, if not his best, and everyone involved's best. That's it for this week's show. Thanks for joining us if you've been joining us live on Spreaker. If you've been listening to us through the podcast later on iTunes, then feel free to leave us a rating. You can also check out our site, which is www.mondaymovieshow.co.uk. And we'll have updates on there during this week. We'll also have on there details of what's coming up on next week's show every Friday. So feel free to check out that and leave us some comments on there as well. So until next Monday at 7:30, I've been Andrew.
And you forgot the fact that we're on Facebook and YouTube.
Yes, we're now going to be on YouTube. Sorry, yes. I always forget the Facebook thing. I don't know why.
Well, the YouTube one you can be forgiven considering that we've only just started to go on YouTube. But the Facebook one, I don't know why you forget that. But we are on Facebook.
I set up the Facebook one as well, which is even worse.
Yep.
So you can find us on Facebook, Monday Movie Show. You'll find us on there. If you're not already following us as well on Twitter, there's Monday Movie Show. It's at Monday Movie Show, or as Stuart said in the first, I think he said in the first part, didn't you?
Yeah.
At AHDVD for me, and at Cryptic Tadpole for Stuart. So until next week at 7:30, my name is Andrew.
And he had to say it twice just so people can make sure that he's Andrew.
Yes.
And yeah, I hopefully will be back next week with A, a better mic, and B, no sore throat.
Yeah. Until next week, bye-bye.
Bye.